And then I also want to talk about that seed being planted, because this is something I wondered after our first conversation.
Sure.
So Daniel Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow,
Okay.
where he talks about mode one and mode two thinking. Are you familiar?
No, no idea.
So mode one thinking, he talks about things that are immediate, that you don't think about doing anymore. For example, driving, it's kind of just subconscious. You do it, you don't need to pay attention. Or mode two is things you actively have to think about doing, like a Sudoku puzzle or a game of chess or something. He talks about at some point you transition something from mode two to mode one. And you can view that as going from conscious to subconscious.
Yes.
And there's probably that similar idea that you deal with at some point, something that was very conscious became subconscious. And that what I want to know is there a way to catch yourself before it becomes subconscious? Or are all these things kind of developed in your very developmental years as a child and adolescent? And it's more about just attacking what's already there and not necessarily preventing more things from being added onto it.
So okay, so you mentioned it going from conscious to unconscious, right? So a lot of that has got to do with your development years, right? It's normally from before the age of 10, right? And the reason for that is before the age of 10, your resources was your parents or your guardians, right? So whatever happened to you where they were not present or they did not help, you did not have the resources to then deal with whatever that problem is that then happened. Like it could be something small like a spider ran over your hand, right? And you got a massive fright. You got no idea what the hell happened. You are scared. And since that day, that person's got a phobia for spiders. This is not just an example, right? That now stays unconscious. That stays in the subconscious. Now, that person will go through his whole life, and whenever that trigger happens, he sees a little spider or something, he freaks out and he doesn't understand why. It's only because the resources he needed at that age was not there. So now he comes to see a hypnotherapist. We can regress and find out exactly that feeling that you have towards a spider, that's fear or whatever it is. We can regress back on that exact emotion. We can go back through the years, all the way until prior to 10, right? And then we'll go through that process of what exactly happened. Then to give an example, then you bring the adult in. You bring yourself, that person's adult. You bring that adult in to explain to the child, you were just a kid. I am now an adult. There's no need to be scared of spiders anymore, right? Now, what you mentioned last time, the unconscious is now becoming conscious. You're bringing the unconscious activity to the conscious awareness, and then it dissolves the problem.
I want to ask a little bit on that, most of it being formed before the age of 10.
Sure.
The immediate example that I think to is, say you're a 19-year-old kid, you just got to university, big change of environments now. Now your parents are absolutely removed as a resource, except for possibly financially.
Sure.
Say they go on a date or something and it goes horrible, and the girl says some terrible things to them, and they now develop this mental blocker of, oh, I'm just meant to be alone for the rest of my life.
Yes.
That feels like it's well, it's conscious in the fact that you're actively thinking at the root of it, subconscious. So is there still cases where subconscious behaviors can have trickled in at later ages, and are those easier to kind of untangle, or do they stay as difficult as the ones in your developmental years?
They stay as difficult till the day you die. That will stay in the unconscious. Remember, the reason for that is the unconscious just wanted to protect you. It wanted to protect you at that stage, at that specific moment, right? So if in your example, the person I spoke to this girl and, it's not going as he wanted and they get into an argument or whatever, and he feels that he doesn't have a way to deal with this. It's not necessarily to say that it's because of what happened in his development years. It's not to say, right? It's normally big things like, it's like normally phobias and fears and big stuff that normally happens, but it could still be due to that for sure. 100%. It can still be that, but it's normally in cases like that, it's difficult to say. Here's how I would discern between the two. if it becomes a problem for the person. In other words, if you had a discussion or a fight with your girl and you upset, that's normal. You're supposed to be upset, right? Maybe it's trying to show you something to fix within yourself, right? Or to communicate with your girlfriend. There's no reason to go for therapy for that. But if it becomes a problem in your life where you can't go to work because anybody just says anything skewed to you and you go sit and get depressed for a month and you're not getting back to work, or you can't drive your car because someone just said something silly to you at the filling station, right? That is something completely different, right? But because that's just something small that you need to work on. It's you're human, you're going through challenges. But it's always the big things. It's the stuff that becomes a problem in your life where you can't function your normal adult life due to that. That's normally regress. I don't regression is not is the last resort. Like I don't just use regression. It needs to be a very strong emotion because otherwise, how's the unconscious going to know? You can't give it, it's not a time traveling box where you can go and listen, take me back to where I was 3 years old in my parents' garage, right? You can't do that. You can only go back on a specific emotion. And obviously, that emotion, for that emotion to be strong, it had to come over, it had to start at that age and then throughout your whole life that followed you, right? And now it's a problem because you're feeling this feeling the whole time.
So, would you think it would be fair to say that if we continue this example of someone getting into a bad date and giving up on dating, which is, in some regards, like a life-hindering thing, would it
Yes.
be fair to say that you can actually probably trace back that that's just piling on something that happened earlier?
It could be, but what I would do is I would always just use other techniques first within conversation, the way I do it with conversational hypnotherapy. If I find that that is not going to untangle the issue, and the person is not, and we're not getting that unconscious to the conscious awareness, then I regress. But otherwise, I don't. It's not needed.
I want to ask on this because it's something that I've been wondering for a while on the podcast, and I've been asking various people. I noticed there's this very fine line between opposite ends of personalities. So, if you take the example of someone that has very negative self thoughts, self image, whatever, they think, let's use a basic example, I'm overweight, right? The fine line between the person who goes, oh, I'm overweight, that's going to motivate me to go gym and like exercise and better myself, and the person who says, oh, I'm overweight, I'm going to eat to deal with this problem of being overweight. It's a very fine line. I want to know, I want to kind of pinpoint, why do people default to one or the other when faced with the same external stimulus or internal stimulus in this case? And I think the conclusion I came to is whatever you developed as a child, that's the thing that's stuck. And I think that speaks a little bit to what you're talking about. So if when you were a kid, exercising made you feel better about your weight problems, and it was the first thing you happened to try, you're going to stick with that.
Yes.
If the first thing you happened to try was eating to suppress your emotions, get that dopamine spike to kind of remove it, then that would be the thing you stick with.
Yes.
So I came to that conclusion, and I think there's some work by it's Dr. David Spiegel. He's a Stanford University a Stanford University lecturer that he does a lot of research on the clinical applications of hypnotherapy and the effect on the brain and whatnot. And he's literally done fMRI scans to show that hypnosis can actually help downregulate certain active areas of the brain that are triggered during traumatic responses. So when I started reading about this, and it's something that's true, is that the forms in the beginning, you're shit out of luck. You chose the wrong one when you first dealt with the problem. Now, how do you undo that later on in life? How do you go from I'm using food as a coping mechanism to now it's becoming, or I'm using food to deal with my weight problems to now my weight problems becoming the motivation that drives me towards doing something?
Yes.
Do you think that there is a way to transition like that, or?
Look, it's very client-centered. So it's difficult, or I think it's I don't want to. It's actually dangerous to decide before the time. I think it's better if this person can maybe find another way of getting motivated, because you don't know what the reason is for them not being motivated, right? If I take an example of yourself, you got a day job, you're busy, but you're still doing this, right? There has to be a very good motivator for you to do that. It's not just you don't get up in the morning and make a conscious decision saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to push through. No, there's an emotional drive. Am I right? There's an emotional drive within you that is forcing that. So whenever something comes up, any task or any challenge comes up, you bulldoze through that because there's an emotional drive. If there was no emotional drive, the first hiccup you're going to say, this is not worth it, screw this, I'm going to just throw it to the side. But because of that emotional drive, but now that goes both ways. Because if that emotional drive is negative, well, what we call negative, that person will block himself to not get what he wants. Because just so I can make this more clear, the unconscious is always there to protect you and safeguard you, right? There's no time involved. There's no past or future. There's just to protect you. The intention is always protection, but the behavior could be anxiety, depression, no motivation. But the intention was always to protect you and safeguard you, right? So in other words, what I get a lot with anxious people when they suffer with anxiety, as soon as they realize the reason for that anxiety is actually unconscious trying to protect you against something that probably happened in the past, and it doesn't want you to ever go through that ever again. So it says, you know what? You will never experience that again because that's worse than this little bit of anxiety you're experiencing now. I'll keep you safe and I'll rather give you bits of anxiety so that you don't have to feel that spider running over your hand again, for instance. Does it make sense?
It does make sense.
So the intention is always good. The unconscious intention it's always good. It's always for protection. It's always for protection, even if it means smoking cigarettes until you die, because the unconscious doesn't know death and life.
It's very interesting because then you have to kind of look at it through this lens of, I have my conscious, which is good at making long-term decisions. I have my subconscious, which is good at making short-term decisions. How do I train the two to coincide with each other?
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that clip from the interview of Agu. If you want to come onto the podcast, remember, all are welcome. Just fill in the form in the description and we'll see if we can have you on. If you want to watch the full podcast, click on the link here. If you want to watch anything else from the channel, click on the link here. Thanks for watching, guys.